Good evening, Charles, sir. I hope you are doing well. We'll just start the event in a while.
Good evening, everyone. I request you to put your cameras on and mics on mute. We will be starting the event in a while.
Hello guys, am I audible to you?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Okay. I thought there had been an audio problem from my end. Right, thank you.
Okay. So live as if you were to die tomorrow. Learn as if you were to live forever. Good evening, everyone. I, Dottie and Divyanshi,
And I, Dotyan Genus, are your hosts for today.
we welcome you all to the third day of Vyuh, a flagship event of DOT, which is the official Techno-Managerial Club of IBS-Hyderabad. We are delighted to host you and thank everyone for joining us today. We hope you enjoy the event. We welcome our esteemed members of faculty, Student Activity Coordinator Madhvi Garikaparthi ma'am, and mentor of DOT Club Krishna Kumar Datsena sir. We would also like to welcome our sponsors Mood Window, Filter Beans, Gift Card, Cherry Blossoms, Kriti Henna, Henry Haven, Soundsworth Manipur, Grebon, Four Vision, ClickoCart, and all our other partners, and thank them all for taking out time from their packed schedule to be the part of this session. We feel motivated by your presence.
So we have a very important video here without which our event would not be possible. So here it is, our sponsor of the event, Vyuh. We would also like to thank our coverage partner, the Newswire team, and our promotion partner, IBS Messenger, our entertainment partner, Expressions Theatre Society, our cultural partner, Samavest Club.
So this time, Dot Club has come up with a new initiative that will help us to flourish our knowledge in various domains of business. And it will also help in enhancing our technical knowledge as well. So let's have a sneak peek into what we got in stores.
Whether it be the next 50 years, 100 years, or the next century, one day or the other, most of the job we are familiar with today will be replaced by artificial intelligence, from cashier and truck drivers to accountants and even doctors. Most blue-collar job, even the white-collar job, can be done cheaper and more efficiently. The question today is whether artificial intelligence can replace the highest form of intelligence, that is human intelligence. We have 5 eminent speakers among us today to demystify all of us on this topic.
So let's swim in the pool of knowledge and experiences of the great and hardworking people we have here. Let's begin our day by inviting our first guest, who is an alumni of IIM Bangalore, Mr. Vinod Sivaramakrishnan, the CIO of Indus Towers Limited. For more than 4.5 years of experience, he has started his career from Hindustan Unilever Limited as a system manager in 1993. From then till today, he has a great experience in huge companies like Brookbond India Limited, Walmart, Jubilant Life Sciences Limited, Usha International, and many more.
The next speaker will be Mr. Sanjay Srivastava. He is also an alumni of IIM Calcutta and has also completed Mahindra Universe program Business Politics, Arts and Humanities at Harvard Business School Executive Education. He started off his career at Crizzle as a marketing manager. Then he moved on to the Tata Teleservices Limited, Tata Communication, Accenture Services, Mahindra World City, working in various positions from executive assistant, product manager, vice president in strategy and business development, to even the board of directors at Mahindra World City. Currently, he is the strategic advisor at Speakin.
Our next guest is Miss Nitanshi Gupta, the Associate Vice President of Genpak Company. She was a management student and an alumni of Bangalore University with finance and marketing as her subject. She has started her career from Kota Securities as a management trainee, and with almost 13 to 14 years of experience, she is now an Associate Vice President of Genpak.
The next speaker was scheduled to be Mr. Arun Sharma. Unfortunately, due to unavoidable circumstances, we regret to inform everyone that he won't be a part of today's conclave.
So moving on to our next speaker, the founder and the CEO of Voltus Wave since 5 years, Mr. Charles Sasi Paul is an alumni of extremely prestigious colleges, including Harvard Business School, IIM Bangalore, and NIT Jalandhar. He has started his career from Virtusa Corporations as a principal consultant in 2002. Before starting up his business, he was a CEO in Cura Software Solutions for more than 1.5 years. He believes in reinventing the softwares with the pace of our lives.
Now, we would like to welcome our esteemed moderator for the conclave, Dr. Shankar Gupta. He is presently working as an associate professor in IBS-Hyderabad in operations and IT. He has been instrumental in academic and managerial skill development through case discussions, live projects, and mentoring of the students. Sir, we request you to kindly take forward from here.
Right. Thank you, Divyansh and Janas, for the wonderful introduction and for inviting us for this event. Thank you, Dr. for that also. Basically, the topic that we have selected for today's discussion, can artificial intelligence replace human intelligence? So I want to put forward a series of questions to the esteemed panelists, and welcome to the esteemed panel members as well. So my first question is, when we talk about from the perspective of artificial intelligence as an educational tool or concept, how different it is from the industry practitioner's perspective. So when industry thinks about artificial intelligence, so how do they go ahead and define that? And to what extent they can assess the magnitude of artificial intelligence in today's world? Let us start with Mr. Shivram Krishnan, sir.
Yeah, so I mean, thank you so much, Professor. And please refer to me as Vinod. I have worked in a number of American companies, so Mr. Sivaramakrishnan sounds like somebody else, mostly like my father. So I prefer Vinod. So thank you so much.
Right.
I
Thank
think
you.
fascinating, and absolutely the right question. And as I was thinking about this topic, which is kind of universal in its scope, I was moved to recollect one of my smarter colleagues from my batch at IIM Bangalore, which is 93. Uh, he's also the CEO of a major software company, CSS, as a matter of fact. And so Manish Tandon used to always say, when exposed to a situation of this nature, the first lines he would come up with is, let's evolve a framework. So when you look at the way we think about artificial intelligence, I think you look at it from three very clear perspectives. Who's asking the question? So me as a layperson, me as a technologist slash scientist, and me as a manager. And obviously one shapes the other because we are all three of those. And I believe that this August audience, about 90 students who have mustered the enthusiasm to show up on a Sunday evening. So my thanks for that. But I think if you really look at it, you have to look at these three perspectives, because the layperson is also your customer, the scientist, the technologist is also your innovator, and the manager is also, if you will, your practitioner. What makes it easy is that these are reducing scopes. That is, the layperson obviously has the broadest view of this, and that is shaped by the Terminator movies and Avengers, the Age of Ultron. The view of artificial intelligence as being something discrete from intelligence as we know it. And I think fair enough, it is a perspective. But that perspective distills when it comes to the scientist or the technologist to, hey, what is possible? What does the technology indicate? Where are the chips going? And to the manager, of course, these are the simplest. What can this do for me in an absolute sense? And I think in her introduction, Divyanshi was talking, or I think it was Janus who was talking about the fact that jobs will change. Jobs have already started changing significantly. So the idea from a manager perspective or from a perspective of a practitioner of management is really what does this fundamentally mean to the balance between the work that you do and what it is worth commercially. And to my mind, that is really where artificial intelligence is hitting, because we've always had this debate, and I'm sure you're having this debate now as we were having it 30 years back on art and science of doing a job. What part of your job is science and what part of your job is art. And to a long view, I've always held that art is only art as long as you don't demystify it. The minute you're able to code it, it's science. And, to a great extent, it's becoming much harder to tell which part of your job, which part of jobs at multiple levels are art and which part of jobs at multiple levels are science. And I think it's fair to say that any part of your job that is science is up for grabs, really speaking. Because the only three fundamental questions are, can somebody do it cheaper? Can somebody do it smarter? And can somebody do it with, more productivity than you can? Which eventually translates to one of the other two, but there you are. And the question then is, what is left? I think if you look at the use cases, whether it's financial, whether it's marketing, you've got some three generic principles that matter. One is the complexity, which is what is the level of data that you're dealing with. Two is how clearly you can codify, or correlate outcomes to the decisions that you're making. And three is really what the relevance is of human experience or other in that role. And I think, increasingly I'm seeing that the third part is getting less relevant. Not perhaps from a qualitative perspective, but certainly from a numbers perspective. I would say certainly as a consumer, if you will, of the technology where we are, this is indeed a place from where one would hesitate to make any predictions about the longevity of really any kind of intelligent work. So I'll leave it at that. I'm sure you have a lot more questions and we have a lot more participants, but thank you so much.
Thank you, Vinod. And I would like to ask Mr. Srivastava about his comments on the growth of artificial intelligence or how he defines it.
Sure. Thanks so much, Professor Sen Gupta, and everyone from the Dot Club of ISB Hyderabad for having us. As Vinod said, it's great to see so many enthusiastic young minds on a Sunday evening. So that shows that there is a lot of natural intelligence in and a natural interest in natural intelligence and artificial intelligence. So that's really heartening to know. Uh, I come from a background of over 25, 26 years of having worked across different industries. So let me try to give you a practitioner guide to the question which you asked is how do you see things in the education or theory, which I'm sure at ISB Hyderabad, at IBS Hyderabad, and at all the other places is being studied vis-a-vis what actually happens in a real life. So from that perspective, if you just have to look at it something at a very framework or at a philosophical level, you really have to see that the question about natural intelligence vis-a-vis artificial intelligence can never be a question of either or. It is almost like a yin and yang or a day and night, or how from human powered effort you move on to a mechanical effort, and then you move on to a computed effort, and then later on. So today some aspects of AI which we not talked of, as long as can be rule based, they have actually already become so embedded that they, just like any adoption of technology, they start becoming mainstream and we don't even know that. So to give you an example, if you start just doing certain searches in Google, or depending on what you watch in YouTube, or whatever you're watching in Amazon Prime or Netflix, the moment there is an inherent AI engine and they are already throwing, people who have watched like this may have also liked it. You, if you who are trying to buy this, you're, so what is happening is it is already, they are well based rules and it is just picking up a lot of data. Where the consideration is and where the natural intelligence holds the key is, do you continuously want a process? It's like a spiral. Do you want a spiral which actually improves the overall quality of output and takes you to a higher level? Or do you want a spiral where if you see more of the same, it can actually be a downward spiral? So there will definitely be a spiral. So the downward spiral of artificial intelligence is, if you just keep working on more and more of the same data, it starts becoming what we say is a echo chamber. So depending on what you follow in any of the social media, Insta, FB, Twitter, if more and more you are seeing more of it, you in turn will start seeing the similar content, and therefore your ability to understand diverse topics goes off. So that's a downward spiral. On the positive side, how it can be used is, as Vinod talked of, that if there is something by which we can actually really set the rules of operations, we define almost a standard if then otherwise else, how that framework comes, then it can really come to the our benefit and say, since all of us are meeting in digital, and one of the biggest reasons which is we are meeting in digital is because of the COVID-19 pandemic and the post-digital. So if you ask any organization, they say, who is actually led to digital adaptation? It's not the CIO or CTO, it is the COVID-19. So they are really the CTO of the change. So from that perspective, if you see post the first wave, some of the biggest breakthroughs and the fastest way to actually identify the viral, the various DNAs and work on the vaccine and really collapse it. Many of those processes actually were collapsed because there was a lot of simulation available, which otherwise in a normal sequence can actually take years along it. So how I would put it is taking what you will study in the education field or in the classical school and then move on to the real life. The difference which I see between natural intelligence and artificial intelligence is it can keep creating base or platform. And I would almost define that natural intelligence is the inherent strategy of what you want to do, because that is dependent on how you want to choose or an organization wants to choose or the direction which you want to take. While increasingly AI can be the operations which ensures you operate cheapest, fastest, best, and make the best use of that data. So just like a successful organization is one which uses intelligent mix of strategy and operations, that's how I would see that there is a synergy and a meeting of minds between natural intelligence and artificial intelligence. Over to you.
Thank you, Mr. Srivastava. I'd like to ask the same question to Ms. Gupta as well. What is her thinking about AI and its progress?
Thank you, sir. And good to see all of these students, and kind of reminds me of my time 15 years back, and really happy to see a whole lot here. I have been, as in my introduction it was mentioned, I've worked across finance and marketing industries, mostly coming from bank and now in tech sector. I have seen an evolution in both these sectors, and also everywhere we are seeing this change of adaptation of artificial intelligence, and it has kind of pervaded even our daily life, right? Even if you're watching Netflix or Amazon Prime, you're scrolling through your FB, or you are just, even in Corona times, we were using these robo vacuums and all, even they operate on artificial intelligence. So it is more like everything around us is now working on. From an industry perspective, I would say any place I have seen the usage, the change here, right? The industries have shifted. When I was working in financial sector, initially we were doing all the groundwork of collecting data on the web and then, creating reports and all. Today, all of these has changed, right? Today, if you want to create a finance report or you want to create a mutual fund report, it is done by platforms. It is not done by humans again. Yes, the write-up might be done by humans, but that's not the case with creating the tables, doing the calculation. Everything is done by there are a bunch of platforms. I'm based out of Bangalore, and I see so many startups today which are AI based. And for example, I'm now in the marketing segment, and in the marketing segment, everywhere, like from our websites, which are becoming using artificial intelligence to take customer data and give dynamic content to them when they visit our websites, to the place where how we put our ads on the online. Everything is driven by artificial intelligence today. For example, now we are implementing a tool called 6 today in our company, and the tool, what it would do is just collect data across various websites, even our own website and also the third-party website, and just process that data and tell me which customers are ready to buy. It has become that simple. So anywhere where I see cost, efficiency, I want accuracy, and I want results in no time. I think all these places where artificial intelligence, the use case of artificial intelligence would be made. There are already various cases where artificial intelligence has been implemented, and there will be in future also. We'll see wherever the work is repetitive, wherever costs can be saved, wherever you want results in no time, and where you want everything to be dynamic and served, but again in a very closed environment where the factors which impact the results are not very, very dynamic. And they do not require, say, emotional or cultural thinking or genetic differences. Those kind of places you will find the use cases of artificial intelligence. And in my mind, I think there are use cases where now we see that AI is now complementing the human intelligence, in fact, today, right? So we see places where machines are processing the data, giving us results, and we are implementing the same, using it to take decisions, right? The top management is using this to take decisions. So that is, I think, the future, which we call as augmented intelligence. So I think that is where we'll find AI and human intelligence both.
Thank you, Ms. Gupta. Now, the same question for you also, Mr. Paul. What is your take on AI at this present situation?
Right. The question is for me, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, okay. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, sure. Please go ahead.
All right. I just made like 2 or 3 slides. I didn't know I just had to speak, but probably I'll just share my screen. Let me know when you can see my screen.
Yeah, your screen is visible.
All right. So, so basically, the question is very interesting. Somebody from Dot Club actually reached out to me a few days ago. Pujita, she said we are actually having this conclave where we wanted to talk about artificial intelligence versus natural intelligence, which one is winning. Or can it overtake? I think that's the question they mentioned, right? So, so the answer is very clear, right? Okay, if you actually talk about a natural brain versus a artificial, brain or machine, what we call it, we will be left far behind, right? Okay, that's very evident. It's already happening. We just don't know that it's happening. So, for example, a lot of people don't understand the differences. Today when we talk about artificial intelligence, a lot of people think about actually machine intelligence, right? Rather than artificial intelligence is slightly a larger topic. Machine learning, it's part of a subset of artificial intelligence. I don't know how many engineers are there in the I'm a die-hard engineer. I code today, so I'll explain like in 2 minutes what is machine learning, and then I will actually move to what is the implication of that and what is actually happening, right? So. So let's say, somebody gives us some data saying, okay, flats in Gachibowli, right? Okay, so 1,000 square foot is actually 10 lakhs, 2,000 square foot is say 20 lakhs. I wish it's so cheap, but I'm just saying. So now if somebody asks a question saying, okay, how much would 1,500, 1,500 square foot cost, right? So if we actually say that, okay, say what happens to 1,500, right? Okay, 1,500 square foot, right? So what you do is you actually plot it on a small map, right? Like a graph, right? So say 10,000 square foot is 10 lakhs, right? So this 1 point, 2,000 square is 20 lakhs, this another point. You join these two, right? And then, for 1,500, you will actually again try to join these two again, and then say, hey, where are we going from, from here to, like, say, maybe this will actually map out on the scale to, say, 15 lakhs, right? So this is a very simple way way of actually talking about, it's called a regression algorithm, right? I'm sure most of you should have, read in your mathematics class saying what is a regression algorithm, right? Okay, there might be, a lot of other, you can actually have a lot more points than these 2 points. Like, say, if you get like a lot of data like that, right? So you will actually put the line through the least squares method or whatever, right? So whichever algorithm, it's called a regression algorithm, right? Now, the data what we earlier gave is actually first time we gave is training data, and then we asked a question to this particular algorithm, and it gave an answer saying, okay, it is actually 15 lakhs, right? So that's very, very, very simple way of actually saying, okay, you ask a question saying, okay, what happens? And based on the previous data what you had, you are actually answering something. The same thing with, like, say, you should be seeing machine learning algorithms all across the board today, right? So whether it is OCR, I don't know if you know, like optical character recognition. Let's say somebody wrote 6 here, right? How do you identify it is 6, right? So you will actually do a matrix here, right? So then you will actually identify each of the squares and say, okay, if this particular square is dark, right, there is a probability that it is actually 6, right? So you will take a probability of each of the squares in a certain pattern, and then you identify, I mean, it can be Shashi, you can identify my photograph. When you're clicking a photograph in your mobile phone, it actually identifies the faces. All is the same concept, right? So basically, you're training the algorithm, you're letting the loose the algorithm on a question, and then it'll actually tell you what the question is. That's a very, very, if you want to learn machine learning, most likely you will deal with some 20 to 30 algorithms and then some combinations of these algorithms. There are k-nearest tree. I mean, like say, if you want to group certain things, right? So k-nearest neighbor is one algorithm. We have additional algorithms like artificial neural networks, convolutional neural networks, regression neural networks, recurring neural networks. So there are a lot of these, some 20, 30, that's all it is, guys. Don't think too much about machine learning. Like, okay, if you can master some 20, 30 algorithms, I think you're as good as a data scientist, right? So what are the implications of these kind of things? Like, this is like becoming just from algorithms to digital workers. Right, yesterday I was actually being asked, saying, Shashi, how do we actually scrape something from the web? And we want to actually, the client was actually having reservations coming in from Airbnb, and then they want the chat messages in Airbnb to be picked up and then, put into another system, right? So we created something called a robotic process automation, or like a digital worker. Every time a new message comes in, it picks up and then puts it into another screen, right? Or another, it saves in another database, right? Now, what we are actually doing is, there is a difference when it actually comes to intelligence versus consciousness. Right. So intelligence is the ability to solve problems, right? And consciousness is how we feel things, like emotion, right? Okay, it's taste. I mean, I like it, I don't like it. Empathy. If somebody gets an injury, you will actually show empathy. Oh my God, I'm so sorry about what happened to you, and so on and so forth, right? So the machines, what we are actually talking today, are very good at intelligence, right? So and they're far better than us in intelligence, right? Because as a machine, the biggest advantage you have is it has unlimited memory, it has unlimited processing power, and it is connected, right? It's connected with other machines, right? So the intelligence, what it actually can bring out from a natural intelligence to an artificial intelligence, right? Artificial intelligence will always, go ahead of natural intelligence because our brains are not connected, right? Today we don't operate like a swarm, right? But machines can operate like a swarm, right? Okay, they can actually connect to one machine is doing specific service, another machine is doing specific service, third machine is collating that data, fourth machine is doing some other analysis on top. So that's where the artificial intelligence is taking over a lot of problem solving and mostly the labor work what we do, right? Okay, whether it is a robot, whether it is a vision, whether it is, so basically you are replicating the brain's function in a machine, right? So because how we most of the time the neural networks what we write, they actually are emulated like human brains, right? Because in human brains you have these neurons and they are connected, right? So same thing, like we have artificial neural networks where we actually connect one machine to another machine, or one particular compute to another particular compute, and then we send the data through a series of these for processing, right? So the consciousness, again, machine doesn't have consciousness, right? Or so we are thinking, right? Okay. Maybe, I mean, the kind of advances these guys are making, the brain scientists are making, there are two revolutions happening, guys, not just one revolution, right? One revolution is this infotech revolution, wherein you are actually bringing a lot of information processing capabilities, and actually this all started somewhere in 2006, I guess, right? So you had like 2 or 3 revolutions which had happened simultaneously, like a black swan events, right? One is your mobile, which came in, one is your, then they started clicking a lot of pictures, so the data started coming out, right? Then this is social networks, which actually, Facebook in this case launched social networks at that time. And the third one is like, okay, there were other guys like NVIDIA who actually brought in this GPU concept, wherein the processing became very fast, right? So these 3 revolutions happened in 2006, and then so suddenly machine learning became a very, very important aspect in processing the big data, what we call it, like, okay, the Twitter data, the social data, whatever we are actually getting today, sometimes we call it big data because it will be bigger. Data is too big. Right? Earlier, before 2000, I mean, we were actually doing, very, very simple data processing, like accounting data and other data. But the moment unstructured data came in through social networks and these mobile devices, everybody now has a computer on his hand, right? So they're actually generating a lot of data. So machine learning became very, very prevalent, and then they started making a lot of advances, right? Now, consciousness, the second revolution I was talking about, this was the infotech revolution, right? The second revolution is, which was actually currently happening, is the biotech revolution, right? People are analyzing what is happening within the body, right? Okay, so till now we were always thinking outside the body, right? Now, you will actually start seeing that, okay, people are measuring what kind of pulses the brain is generating. It's actually an electric signal, right? The brain, if you see something and then you touch something hot, suddenly there is like a reflex, because there are 2 waves which went up, right? One to the brain, and then the second one is like, okay, self-preservation. You actually remove that from that hot, wherever the heat is, right? So that is just a chemical reaction and some messages going back and forth, right? So that the brain scientists are decoding the brain, right? Now, when I don't know if you guys have seen Neuralink from one of the Elon Musk's company, they actually are connecting the brain and the machine, right? And the moment the brain and the machine is connected, right? Okay, there are too many things can happen, right? Maybe, I mean, in future, where 2050, 2100, consciousness can just be a few more algorithms, right? Consciousness can just be a few chemical reactions, and probably some settings can be made, and then algorithms can actually come out, right? So what is happening with these two revolutions is that you can see a lot of jobs what humans do today are actually being taken away by the machines, right? And so when that happens, right, when you grow up, you might not have a job, right? I'm not just joking; it's true, right? Because Mr. Vinod was actually saying that, right? So from a managerial perspective, like, okay, how can I get something cheaper? How can I get something better? How can I get something faster? Right. So the digital worker, whatever you actually call him, right, will be far more efficient than human, right? Human has to sleep, eat, take a break, right? All this. Digital workers don't need to take a break, right? They're far more efficient. They're far more, productive. They're far more cheaper because there is no inventory, right? It's just like, okay, you throw a bunch of hardware at it, you put some electric power to it, and then that's it, right? And then it's a lot more cheaper, right? So what ultimately we are actually looking at here is that in the industrial revolution, the free capital markets, capitalization, communism, all these models, right? They were primarily either stopping the exploitation or actually creating exploitation of humans, right? Some communism tried to come and say stop the exploitation. Capitalism tries to actually exploit people and then bring up more wealth for very few people, right? But from exploitation, right? Okay, we are moving to more towards an irrelevance state, right? So when I say irrelevance, right, the humans out there who are less educated or less, see, the problem is that we take a lot of time to process things, right? To remember things, right? And machine learns things very fast, right? So at some point, let's say a driver, right, for 20 years, if he actually drove a car, now is actually being replaced by just a self-driving car, right? Now suddenly what happens? Now what will the driver do? Right? He will try to do, say, something else, right? Okay, maybe go to a supermarket, work as a cashier, right? But the problem is that even in the supermarket, if that job is gone, right? I mean, the problem is not just drivers, right? Like what happens if the doctor loses a job? Because the robo-doctor actually is far more intelligent, far more effective than a human doctor. Then what will happen? I mean, like, okay, he can't be a pilot, right? I mean, maybe actually pilots are already replaced, right? You only have drones nowadays, right? So nobody wants to actually have a manned pilot in either warfare or surveillance or whatever, right? So there is a chance that you will actually see a lot of irrelevant class. Like there's a useless human class which will actually get created in the future. Right, and probably democracy will not even work at that time, right? Because today democracy, everybody votes, elect your leaders. They will actually say they will do everything for the people. But there are superhumans who are rich people who are actually getting bioengineered and then getting like superpowers because their genes are edited. They are far more intelligent. They're far more, because of the biotech resilience, they are able to edit genes, right? And then suddenly make superhumans. And then there are other, less privileged people probably who might not have that access to those gene editing capabilities, right? And probably they will not be bioengineered. So by 2050, or probably a little more, 10 or 15 years down the lane, right? You will see like, okay, there is a superhuman who actually are connected to machines and they have a different way of actually dealing with things, right? Okay, and there is another class of humans who probably are organic humans who are far more lesser intelligent, lesser capable than the superhumans or superhuman machines. I don't know what we should call them, right? But But that is where we are going, right? I'm not trying to scare you guys, right, guys? This is really what is happening, right? Okay. And today, I mean, like, okay, you listen to algorithms, right? Most of the time, the amount of data which is actually you leave on the digital footprints. Today, you want to date somebody, Tinder tells you who you should actually date, right? You want to go shop something, Amazon tells you where you should actually buy and what you should buy. I mean, I was actually reading a little bit about and chatting in WhatsApp about some digital transformation. And suddenly next day, right, Amazon actually sends me a mail saying, okay, buy this book. And, you don't have a choice, right? I mean, you'd love that book so much that you'll actually go and buy. It's a positive thing, right? It can be negative things as well because there's too much relevance. Sometimes you voluntarily give out some data, like say shopping data is nobody cares. But what if it's health data? Do you want to reveal it? Do you don't want to reveal it? And the problem is that how will the algorithm determine what is good and bad? Right? Let's say you are actually in a self-driving car, right? There's a kid there. If you move and go into the another lane, okay, the owner gets killed, right? Or the kid gets killed. Now, how will you justify or how will you determine which is good and which is bad? I mean, like I said, there is no consciousness for machine, right? It only can drive, but it doesn't know how to make decisions, right? Maybe there are some settings like, okay, Tesla guys will say, hey, in this particular case, what do you want me to do? Do you want me to kill that person or self-preserve yourself, right? Maybe it's just a setting, right? So the amount of digital footprints you're leaving is actually going to create some digital dictatorships, right? Because it's probably not the governments who have this data. It's actually these corporations who have this data, the surveillance which is actually happening. And those who own the data own the future. I think I'll leave my thoughts here because that's a bit of fast track through what's going to come in the future. So the amount of data is actually we are generating is changing the way things are happening. So I will leave it there and then probably open up for more questions.
Thank you, Mr. Paul. So taking cue from your excellent slide, I just want to put forth a little different question, which I just now had at the back of my mind is, basically speaking, like Mr. Srivastava was talking about the concept of natural intelligence. So over the years, over the decades, we have figured out that at every decade, some kind of automation has come up, which people have slowly accepted since the concept of technology adoption. So right now, at this juncture, are we moving too fast towards going ahead and accepting technology so much that we are consciously trying to curb our the growth of our natural intelligence, or is it happening in a phased manner? What are your thought process about that? It's open to all the eminent panelists. Anyone can go.
So I'll go first if I may, please. I mean, I think and Shashi, I think an excellent sum up, if a little dystopian. For people like me who grew up on Asimov and the 3 laws of robotics, this is really meat and drink, if you will, to me. I think the question you asked, Professor, is I think one of adoption. And, I have a very utilitarian theory of adoption, which is that, there is nothing that you or I or anybody in this forum can do. It's not that we're consciously encouraging it or stopping it or making a choice. At a point of, and, a lot of economic students in the room, I'm guessing, at a point where the utility of what we're using exceeds our assessment of the risks of using it, adoption will happen. And the pace of adoption, to your point, we've had different waves of technology since the 30s or 40s, and every wave is taking a shorter time because your mechanism of spread is significantly more potent. If you just look at, for instance, the whole online payments industry over the last couple of years, I think, the network effect of having the devices, these are not things that, you or I control. This is just the ecosystem is the way it is. And if something makes sense for person A and is likely to make sense for person B, all we've guaranteed is that the delta time between person B hopping onto the platform relative to say color television or something is like exponentially quicker. I don't believe we as a collective exercise a choice in this, unless you are a technology monopolist and you choose, do no evil or something and decide therefore that you will withhold certain technology advancements. And then, well, you can do it for yourself. You can't do it for your next competitor who independently stumbles on the same thing 15 minutes after you, right? So unless you have the ability to self-regulate, it's very unlikely that you can hold this or influence it. I think there is a delusion of control when it comes to some of these things. But the truth is really that it's a simple network effect. Somebody does something that makes sense for himself, and then the next guy looks over his shoulder and says, that looks cool and I will do it as well. And now, thanks to the way you can spread things around, that network impact is higher. I certainly don't believe, Professor, that there is a semblance of control in this. And by the way, this is also a question of economics, that at a point, when you have all of these network effects coming and then you overwhelm or you deluge the provider of this service. It used to happen a lot when we started with internet bandwidth. And I used to work with G in those days, and we used to work with small providers, and we used to say, these guys have a great quality of service. Guess what? The minute we all jumped on that guy, his quality of service would go down because he's scaling. And then, you'd kill him, and then you'd go on to the next one, and then you'd kill him. Till eventually you would reach a point where the capability of the system to deliver matches, what is expected from it. And that is when you see, our technology kind of get mainstream. So, I mean, I'm sorry if I have to, say it that way, but really speaking, it is not a conscious choice. Adoption is something that happens irrespective of you, as long as the fundamentals of the choice are sound, it will happen.
So
I would also like, sorry.
Yeah, go ahead.
Sorry. Yeah, so I would also like to add that with from the time these industrial cycles are happening, right? So when we are talking about today's markets, even with the new market or the existing market, the kind of competition which is there in every market, the only way where you can sustain yourself is bringing in innovation. And that is where most companies are banking on, right? That with an artificial intelligence, I can gain advantage over my competitor. Though over a period of time, both will have the same. For example, Amazon gained that competitive advantage by adopting AI much faster than any of its competitor, and has become a giant based on that only. And and it becomes a differentiator. Okay, and then you move from your competitor moves to the same point where he's offering the same stuff. And then you again move to another point where you improvise on your technology. And today the customer has also become so demanding that unless you have these advantages, it is very difficult to sustain in the market. So to give that kind of experience to the customer, it is imperative that you adopt this and evolve over a period of time. You cannot, even banks today, why PSU banks and private sector banks are, the differentiation is all of us know offhand. It is because a private sector bank is offering you kind of customer experience, though the operations and everything remains same, but the customer experience is vastly different. It is poles apart. And that is because the kind of technology the banks have adopted. So it is imperative today for industries and various companies to adopt and change. And even from a leadership point of view, if we look today, the leaders who are able to balance both human and machine in a certain way, where they are able to mix and match and bring the maximum efficiency, are the leaders who are surviving, and others perish. So that's my take on it, that it is imperative that you adopt.
Yeah. So Professor, let me give a slightly different point of view. And I think I bring that point of view because, as I mentioned, I've been part of multiple industry and multiple technology shifts. So I've seen many of these trends getting identified. And how do you really identify a early trend? And how does the adoption happens? And then you move on to the mainstream, and then you move to the next evolution. So when I was seeing Charles Ceci's presentation, I think the concluding slide, I wouldn't want anyone to be really scared of it because I would actually, while not being strongly disagreeing with it, I would simply put it that those are the concerns which we need to be conscious of, but that will not be the conclusion. So there's a difference between being aware of the concerns vis-a-vis, as Vinod was saying, it looks like a dystopian conclusion or ending. So it will not, because fundamentally human intelligence has a way to capture this. So whenever any technology change happens, and right from when from traditional mechanical thing to we move to electric cars and motorized vehicles, or the industry 1.0 or industry 2.0, we really thought people will get actually redundant, but it didn't. Actually, a whole lot of human as well as the economy really became more efficient and the productivity rose. So same way, I think some other things which we are speaking of, if you see in industry 4.0, not just digital or the AI is not just really going and impacting only a computer or a technology-led industries, but even otherwise. So if you see now in industry 4.0, really even in a larger manufacturing setup, using AI, you can even do a customization without compromising on the cost. So each one of us can really get a, say, a unique nameplate or even a unique gift, and the price is no different. So even if you're ordering a one particular unit. So what is really going to happen is right now we are just at the cusp of a massive explosion. So due to the reasons which I think we have discussed, we have seen all of them have actually confluenced, and we are at the significant wave. And how I would put it is, it's no different than a classic, whenever you put a capital expansion or you put any new expansion into any technology, just say in Y2K, was a driver for a computer adoption and really looking at the chips, which ensured that you will never have this issue related to redundancy. So right now, there are all a lot of applications as AI itself, as the technology is evolving, a lot of disparate things have come up. And as all these disparate technologies and applications evolve, especially talking due to the network effect, due to a faster adaptation, we are seeing both the positives and the negatives. But moment all of them will have a certain minimum economic size, there will always be some set of controls which would get put in. And let me give two specific examples. So almost everyone referred in some ways to the social media or the personal data. So moment if you see beyond a point it started happening, whereas the North America or the European Union, they started putting the GDPR laws, which started defining that if you collect the data, you have to define what is the end of use of the data. India was slightly behind the curve, but now they have said that the draft data privacy bill is ready. Now, hopefully in this session will be taken. Same way, everyone started talking of, say, let's pick up another new technology, which is actually using a lot of it. Everyone is talking that people are becoming super big and therefore the FBs or the Teslas will become the big evil? Can we go to a decentralized model? So suddenly now we have seen that while something like a Bitcoin and blockchain was almost there for last one whole decade, but really in the last 3 to 4 years, it is almost being seen as a pushback against super centralized, super collection of data and privacy. So it is getting anonymized. But moment that adaptation has happened, we have already now seen increasingly there is a balance which is being brought to say how do you really leverage the advantages of a blockchain or decentralization or anonymization, but at the same time use that in real life. And while everyone is really fascinated these days with the crazy price of 2000 plus different kinds of coins who fluctuate their value 24 by 7, but there are various here and now examples of actual advantages which are happening. If one of the most simplest example, not many people are aware of, that the complete Coven platform actually the way how it really operates for vaccination, and you get all the cross checks happening within a matter of seconds, and moment the operator enters your data, you got a vaccination, you get everything. It is actually using blockchain as one of the elements for there. So I think the concerns are real, but because AI itself is really evolving. So as it evolves and it reaches a stage where it has a certain minimum critical mass, the changes will definitely be faster, but there will always be a mechanism which will put in, which ensures that the broad direction is still can be seen. There will always be some outliers where it may not be able to get controlled, but I would look at those things more, not to keep considerations in mind, but not to be overly concerned.
Right. I think from an adoption point, okay, you can hear me, right? So, so from an adaptation standpoint, I mean, it's like, I'll give you an example, right? So I have my brother, my elder brother, and co-founders of Volkswagen. He is not that he's non-tech. I mean, he is an Accenture, Wipro, there's a lot of delivery management and all of that. So I always use my Google Maps whenever I drive. So because we are co-founders, most of the time we together drive. And then initially, the guy started, he's so arrogant, right? So he says like, okay, damn, we are in Hyderabad. We know each and every gully in Hyderabad, right? Why do you look at Google, right? And recently, I mean, after a few days, right? Okay, after he started using, this was like 2 years back, I think. So Google actually tells you exactly, I mean, it'll determine a particular route for you, right? You have to listen to that particular algorithm, which is actually giving you the route, because it'll take care of real-time traffic, right? It'll take care of the shortest path. It'll take care of so many other factors before it actually suggests you, right? And then now he actually says, okay, first look at Google, and then only you start driving wherever you want to go, right? Whether you want to go to a client's place or whether you want to go somewhere else. So there is a change happening, right? See, the amount of intelligence the machines will have, right? You will be forced to listen to that, right? I mean, it's good and bad, right? So it's like, okay, first thing is it's good because it will take you to the shortest path. It will take you through the least traffic path, right? Okay. Now there are other advantages. Let's say you have a HR manager who's actually hiring, right? Now there can be so much, I mean, nowadays, and especially in IT and other industries, like, okay, there is like something called backdoor, right? I don't know, like a backdoor. I don't know how that happens, but, that can never happen if there is a objective digital worker playing the role of a HR manager, right? No boy, no girl, no, beauty doesn't play a role, only competence will play a role, right? Okay, and that is the positive side of things, right? So because most of the things Mr. Sanjay was mentioning, like there are a lot of positives. I mean, hope you guys did not take all the negatives on my slide, but there's a lot of positives, right? Because you will actually be empowered because of these algorithms, right? These machine learning algorithms, these digital workers can, I mean, everybody in the leadership level would like to understand, get intelligence, and then act, right? And most of these things, your leaders, whether it is your country leaders or whether it is your company leaders, whether it is your own family, right? They will always actually rely on data to actually make decisions. The more amount of data, the better the decision, and or the more amount of insight rather than just data. Because most of the time you actually process the data, get the information, from the information you get the insight, and from the insight you actually would like to take a decision, right? Okay, and getting more and more insights, actually algorithms will really help you, right, to get there. So I don't think it's a choice. I mean, Mr. Vinod was saying about network effects. That's very true, right? So because if one person has it, the other person will have it, right? Because then we are living in a very networked area, and network effects will definitely drive the adoption very fast, right? So I think that's my 2 cents.
All right, right. No, I asked the question of adoption for another reason is because when we talk from the perspective of, like Ms. Gupta rightly said, that technology has become the clear and practical differentiator in any and every kind of business right now, right from banking to any online retail for that matter. But the question which arises and which pertains to this topic also, so are we saying that technology is the differentiator, or basically speaking, the mind behind that technology would be the differentiator in future? Means if we talk about AI, so basically people who build those algorithms would go ahead and build a better future or have a completely different domain to work into? Or are we saying that the technology or AI as such, the machine-based decision making, would be the differentiator in the future?
I would say it is both, Professor. The reason being that if you see even today's trend, the people who are creating this technology, there's huge demand. And even in future, when we look at the workforce or the mix of this workforce is going to change drastically. We are not going to have the people who are today work on top of the funnel of jobs which can be replaced by AI. Those jobs are definitely going to go, and there's no doubt about it. So it is up to us, how do we improvise ourselves and how do we go to the where in the funnel we stand? Are we on this lower end of the funnel or bottom end of the funnel, wherein we are adding a lot of value just by our mind? So that those people are definitely the differentiator, because they are, and these technologies, however advanced they become, there is going to be a need of an update. There is another next level which is required, and these are the people who will be bringing the next level to this technology. So the technological revolution never ends. There is another level which is always required, and it will be brought by people only. So these people are definitely the differentiator. When we say the technology is the differentiator or AI is the differentiator, I'm saying from the end result which is coming out of the technology, the insights which are coming out of the technology, how we are using it, putting it to use, and making ourselves getting an advantage over all the other competitors which we have. So both the things, I think, add a lot of difference. And that is why today companies are placing so much weight on the workforce, the HR, and they are trying to predict what kind of trainings are needed, what is the mix of people and the talents which they should have in their workforce. There's a lot of emphasis on that. And there's a lot of investment, if we see, on the training side, which is happening by the companies. And the reason being that they need more intelligent workforce, a more adaptable workforce than we had previously. So the mix of workforce is definitely going to change, and that would be a key differentiator in coming time. And also how we utilize this technology, both the things.
I think, Professor, your question is very interesting on the meta front, which is really, is it the technology or is it the people behind the technology? And I think it is certainly a matter of concern. You look at every Hollywood sci-fi movie of the last 20 years, and it eventually boils down to an Elon Musk-like character who wants to dominate the world and has proprietary technology that allows him to do that. I don't think that's an unfounded fear from that point of view, is the centralization of technology. I think the answer really comes from the same thing that I said earlier, which is really that the minute something becomes or comes out in the open as a solution, the pool, if you will, is so vast of people in technology. You look at China, for instance, when it comes to manufacturing. Put out something today, and in a week there will be 20 Chinese companies that have a passable, acceptable variant of that at a tenth of the cost or whatever it is. And I think to a great extent, it's not even about your IPR laws, or it's not even about the ability to protect what you have. It is just that the pool out there of intelligent people that are looking to do something is so vast that eventually your competitive edge, such as it is, unless you actively do what several of the larger companies are doing by buying out smaller and more innovative competitors, but even there you see that the ability, it's like trying to put a lid on something that, like on a volcano. Eventually the critical mass will build to a point where anything that you've done, and by the way, half of that is because of the efforts you're making to put it down. Because the minute I, as Google, buy a company that seems to be a nimble competitor, there's 20 guys out there looking at that technology and saying, wow, if Google thinks this is worth buying, there is something to it. And as you see hungry and smart people, like doubtless number of people in this group, getting into that, eventually you create that same force that bursts it open. So I think to a great extent, the pioneers, we have a lot to thank them for, but the concern that this is one set of people or this will be the same set of people, I think is somewhat unfounded, at least from experience. I mean, you look at it right from the railways in the US and, the Rockefellers and the robber barons, so to speak, if you wanted to look at it that way. From there to Elon Musk, I don't think anybody has a propriety on intelligence. I don't think anybody has ownership on the ability to innovate. And certainly I don't believe that where we are now in terms of citizen development, I don't believe we can put the lid back on this box. That is gone. It's more a question of time and what can you do and how can you delay it. And when the very act of delaying it is accelerating interest in those technologies, I think you get into a situation where, if you are a pioneer or you're an inventor, you just want to make your splash and move on. If you look at the number of activities that Elon is engaged in, that should give you a good idea that if he believed he had a proprietary on one, I think he'd be doubling down there. But if he's doing 10 things, there's no better indication for you than that he believes that over time, 9 of those things would become mainstream. Over time, he would not continue to maintain the edge that he has in those. Otherwise, a logical investor would be investing in all those other things. So, it could just be that he is that kind of multi, potential servant that really has all these areas. But I'd like to think of it from a business point of view as a conscious diversification with the knowledge that the edge in these industries is not sustainable.
Sure.
So, go ahead, Sanjay.
Yeah, sorry. Yeah. So, how I would put it is, I'll take your question, Professor, in two parts. One is, let's see your question in a bit of in-depth. And second, I would like to also give a conclusion. Ultimately, we have almost 100 young minds. So what does it mean? So what? Yeah, I mean, we can all give a different perspective. So on the first part, I think fundamentally how we really have to see it is, I go back to my original hypothesis that it is not a either or. What there are two critical things which will happen. One is, of course, the human or natural intelligence is very important and will play a very critical role. The second aspect is that for evolution, whether it's technology evolution, it's evolution of humanity, it's evolution of business, is what is a framework for next level up movement. So in that framework of next level up movement is where I see there is a good opportunities for convergence of natural intelligence and artificial intelligence. So natural intelligence again is opening the vista and thinking of possibilities which didn't exist. And what artificial intelligence is almost, you can say, is the accelerator on the pedal, which you actually put forward can actually then disrupt it. And that's how a combination of these two things is how faster network expansion, a faster adaptation, and even a constructive destruction will happen. So if you see when the automation of production happened, and that's how you've got all these nano chips and you've got these Intel chips, and where the computing speed is going on, everyone says that the normal phone which all of us are carrying is possibly has 500x of the total computing power of Apollo 13, which actually went on the moon. Yeah. So does it mean that all of us really became astronaut? No. But if you see the cost is actually a fraction of that. So how has that been possible? That has been possible is by someone or a set of humans have thought that they are new applications. On top of it, you combine the technology which you had, you combine the automated process, and the result and the resultant benefits is what you have, and that will be the natural evolution. So to answer the second aspect, if all of this, there will be a frantic pace of change, and change is the only constant we'll have. So what does it really mean for everyone from the dot club or IBS or anyone graduating now or later? I think fundamentally you need to step back, and it doesn't matter what discipline you are graduating with, as we have been discussing, it will, all of this change in many aspects, known and unknown, will touch all of them. So what is really something which all of us, especially the young graduates, who are going to get into the field, whether they are an entrepreneur, professional, or an employee, is you really have to be ready to build three key capabilities for yourself. And those three attributes are, you should have a capability to continuously learn, unlearn, and relearn. If you are able to embed yourself with those three capabilities, you will be able to ride the tiger. If you are not able to have these capabilities and continuously evolve yourself, whether it is a faster competitor, whether it is a disruptive technology, or whether it is someone who is more hungry to learn, by one or more of these factors, you may not be able to perform as well as others. So more than having the domain knowledge, I think having capability to learn, unlearn, and relearn, and continuously have the evolution is what I would leave that as one of the key aspects which all of you should keep in mind while you discuss this development.
Right.
How do you
Yeah. So basically, like, okay, I have a daughter, 10th grade now. They're going for board exams now. So one day I was actually having this conversation with her, saying, okay, she actually does a lot of painting, right? And I was saying, okay, look, machines are coming, so they'll actually do better paints than you, right, or better arts than you. And then she only said, like, this was like 4 years back, I think. She was 6th grade at that time, right? Dad, probably machine can do a paint or do a painting, right? But it doesn't know what to paint, right? Okay, so that's where the end of the day, I think we are still like Nitanshi was saying, right? So you'll have a higher level objective, and then the technology will probably augment whatever you are actually trying to do, right? So probably that's my 2 cents. Yeah.
Right. Another reason why I had actually asked the question is because, like Ms. Gupta was saying, one important aspect which technology has made in a different way, or AI has been making different, is basically the end results. Now, to just get an understanding about, like Mr. Paul in his presentation showed us that, is there an opportunity where consciousness-based decision-making and programmed-based decision-making can be clubbed together to go ahead and create a much more important data or information for that matter? Or basically speaking, where do you see the difference actually exists in terms of the consciousness-based decision-making was much better as compared to now, whatever program-based decision-making we are having? What would be your take?
I think improvement comes from outcomes. So I think when you ask the question and you say, okay, I'm doing this, why are people buying? Why are people not buying? And, there is a consciousness that then drives what is that choice, what is that moment of truth, what information is enough. And I think to a great extent, we start looking at outcomes only when they go wrong. I mean, I don't believe that consciously we look at outcomes that go well. And to my mind, this whole idea of consciousness is, again, like your previous question, a meta question. It's something that happens at the point of decision making, but how it has happened is something that you would not know. If I were to ask you to articulate the basis for a consciousness-based decision, it is a product of some unique combination of biases and experiences that you have, some interests that you have, some predilections that you have. And I don't believe really that the science of, normal activity applies to that, at least in any intelligible way. I mean, sure, you can correlate to the point that Shashi made, you can correlate the hell out of it. But you can't replicate that exact, space that comes in each one of us. So if I look at it very objectively, where consciousness comes in is how do you shape that experience and how do you take that data that you have and say, okay, now what am I going to do with it in the direction of decision making or in the direction of development? I think that goes back to the whole point I articulated earlier about this whole art versus science theory. The more you explain of this, if you look at what we're doing with, say, for instance, Nitanshi would be very familiar with customer journey mapping and, activity from a website to say, based on 3 clicks you make on a site, what is your predilection to buy? What is the likelihood that you will buy at what price? What are you seeking? What value are you seeking? Correlating with your Facebook profile to figure out what kind of a person you are. I think there's enough advancement there that suddenly you look at it and what used to be an art till last week is a science now. So this consciousness that you talk about, I think is that art part of it, which is steadily getting, either smaller or we reach a point where the complexity of that outweighs, any individual benefit to a company, because now I can't make out what you will buy anymore because I don't know any more about your background or what makes you from a buying point of view. But if I can figure that out on the law of averages enough for it to work for me for 60, 70, 80% of my target segment, I really don't care. I mean, I don't mean I don't care personally, but as an organization or as a customer or as a producer of goods, I really don't care if the effectiveness of my algorithm is good enough to convert that to a successful outcome for me. So I don't know if I helped or complicated the issue more, but I really believe that the consciousness piece that you're talking about is something that just represents the unknown from a scientific point of view.
I think consciousness it's a very good question, actually. Like you said, I don't know if you're complicated. But I mean, the whole point is that, okay, how do you define the purpose of life, right? So that's when, because you can do a lot of things, right? You can create E is equal to mc square. I mean, once E is equal to mc square is there, right? You can actually create power for all the villages, or you can actually create a Nagasaki, right? Okay. So, I mean, in my earlier speeches to IBS, right? One of the professors actually asked me saying, you guys are entrepreneurs, so you create these technologies. Do you actually take responsibility for your inventions, right? And probably that's where the consciousness comes into play, right? So when you actually own the responsibility. I mean, Facebook was created and I don't think Zuckerberg had any clue that, okay, Cambridge Analytica would take and influence the damn democracy of USA completely, right? I mean, when the technology goes a little bit out of hands, right? We don't know how to control it, right? There's always a risk. And then, we don't know how this whole artificial intelligence can shape up, right? There's a lot of debate around how the governance council should actually be formed. And sometimes we even doubt whether even if it is possible to create a governance council, right? Because everybody actually will have a different thought about it. I mean, especially in a geopolitical world, right? What is right for one guy is wrong for another guy, right? Okay, and the power is actually getting spread like anything, right? So with a small amount of technology, and I mean, just look at YouTube, right? You can learn so much from YouTube, right? I wish it was there in '96 when I graduated. I mean, trust me, right? I mean, I still use YouTube a lot to read. Nowadays, the shorts are coming. Instagram is taking over, but you can learn how to create a nuclear bomb from YouTube, I guess, right? I mean, so it's very, very, very important to actually be cautious about that, and your consciousness probably is what should guide that principle, right? So that's my 2 cents. Yeah.
My mind, I think whenever a new technology comes in, it takes time to settle. And when Facebook came and all these social media started, everybody was just using them. And, then came a point where your data started getting in various places, and then people started raising questions. And then that's the same thing when we are talking about all the other use cases of artificial intelligence. And with any other technology for that matter. For example, when the nuclear technology came, it was used and exploited. But today we have very positive use cases of nuclear technology. So now that the artificial intelligence has penetrated across various industries, people have started reverse asking the questions also. Even customers asking why you are sending me emails 5 times a day. These are automated emails which are going out. But the companies are developing that consciousness, people are developing that consciousness that, and they are, I think when this reverse question starts, that is where you start drawing the line. And that is where you'll see laws coming up, and when people will start questioning. And that is where we saw all the debate where Facebook founder was supposed to be present in the US parliament, and they were questioned on how the data was used and other questions. So I think it is a matter of time, and it is a matter of how the customer or the end user would react, and when they start questioning, and that is when the consciousness would arise. Otherwise, corporations in themselves will never ask these questions on themselves. They will keep exploiting till the time, the reverse gear starts. So I think it is that. For example, very unique use cases in the, what Sashi mentioned, that HR, if we have a virtual HR, there would be no discrimination. But at the same time, if you don't have discrimination, how do you bring on the people who are underprivileged, right, into your workforce? Because there's no discrimination, right? So when everybody gets equal chance. But at the same time, there are people who are coming from, say, LGBTQ community, or say women, okay, and they come from different circumstances, they come from different backgrounds. How do you bring them if you have everybody paced at equal, and there is just a machine who is deciding on who would come and who would not come? So I think that this is the consciousness which you add to your learning, and that is why I say, and my conclusion on this particular topic was that it is not possible to completely replace human intelligence, because they bring in very, very different kind of abilities compared to what machines can give you. Machines can save cost, machine can bring accuracy and efficiency, but at the same time, machines cannot replicate the emotional quotient or your cultural quotient. Those things will be absent in machines. And that is what humans can add. And that is why two have to live in a parallel world, and humans can add consciousness. And that also will happen when obviously the technology settles, but at the same time, obviously they'll keep using artificial intelligence for their uses. That's my take.
Yeah, so I think as Nitanshi and even Sasi talked of, there's no perfect world. So how I would really look at it is rather that these two worlds, they don't really exist as Nitanshi talked of as parallel world, but increasingly they are going to be a converged world. So in the converged world, you have to look for the ideal reference of what is the right balance. So there are some inherent advantages of artificial intelligence, and we really have to leverage it. If you really cut through all the clutter and look at what are the top 2 or 3 things which AI can really do well. AI can really help you tremendously with the speed of execution. AI can definitely help you with the operational ability as well as accuracy. And it can, most importantly, it can help you with tedious chores because of the fundamental human nature over a period of time with more and more external stimulations. Anything which is tedious, you may find humans getting distracted very soon. And in fact, so these are the top 2 or 3 things where AI can really excel. But for AI to really excel in it, you have to ensure that the human framework which is being created is really very, very defined. And then when we are looking at the converged worlds, we also have to see what is it which is really unique about human or natural intelligence. And what do we really excel at? And from that perspective, I think, again, just how I highlighted top 2 or 3 things for AI, the top 3 things possibly I'll highlight for human or natural intelligence is, one is, of course, the intuition. Now, intuition in a very simple way actually is more about the implicit knowledge which you have and where the framework is coming in. If some of your folks who are interested in reading books, you must read something called as Blink by Malcolm Gladwell. Where how it really works is when you say it's really about intuition, is really how you can have a very minimal or thin slice of information, and that thin slice of information is good enough for you to take a right decision. You don't need to have a conglomerate because you will never have enough. So you should have intuition, you should have the right instincts, which is how do you really if you are continuously moving towards a positive learning cycle, you can actually sharpen your instincts, because that is where is something new which can be done. And then the third thing is really about your reflexes or your evolutionary thinking. And that is where, whether we took an example of Elon Musk or way back a Tesla or a Newton or even Albert Einstein, all of them have really the biggest folks who have had a big impact are the ones who have really pushed the boundaries. So that is what is really unique about the natural intelligence, and you combine it with what is advantageous for a AI, and then you can have a convergence. And just like in real life, over a period of time or in a particular industry or in a particular domain, the scales will continue to keep shifting. Maybe initially AI runs ahead of the curve, then the humans think of the next thing, or humans are thinking of a new thing, and till the time enough algorithm doesn't exist, the AI is not able to excel that. So over a period of time, it will continuously be a path of upward movement. That's how the balance will come.
Basically speaking, for me, this is such an interesting discussion, and as time is passing by, I'm feeling more oriented towards asking you more number of questions related to this. But since there's time constraint, I'll just keep the questions reduced to only two. So my penultimate question to you is why I brought in the concept of brought in this decision-making aspect is like in the 30s, we used to talk about something called as bounded rationality. Every manager has got a fixed limit within which they can act rational, and then basically after that, they might leave or feel suicidal for that matter if given too much pressure. Now, when we talk from the perspective of standardizing productivity or maximizing productivity in an organization now, so do you, that's where the question came into my mind, that whether we can use AI or automate a specific situation, a process for that matter, and standardize the productivity without declining the quality at any level? Or do you think that, basically speaking, human intelligence can come in and means still keep on maintaining the same level of quality at any given point in time of productivity?
I think there's an ecosystem impact, Professor. When you talk about this, I mean, you are only as fast on the road as traffic permits. Beyond the point, you run into people. Beyond a point, you run into other things. I mean, I think so. Your ability to maintain a standard of productivity is constrained by factors that are independent to the source of your productivity. And I think to some extent, it's also the point that I think both Susi made and Sanjay made most importantly just now, which is this cycle of catch-up, which is you bring productivity to a point, but then you are constrained by everything else in the system till somebody else optimizes some other constraint. So you obviously today we are significantly more productive, but eventually I believe there is an element of the human side of things that holds things up. In a manner of speaking, the consciousness side of thing often ends up holding things up from a productivity point of view, because yes, you have to wait for people to get their heads around it. You have to wait for people to consciously decide to adopt this. And to a great extent, there is this entire cycle of catch-up that happens where you create a productivity boost and then you understand how to digest it, and then it becomes business as usual, and then you have the next jump. Now, not all of that productivity is linear. I mean, if you look at leisure time and your ability to spend time and so on, that is sometimes retrograde. So you're actually getting more time to spend the more that you do that technology, as opposed to, let's say, 30 years back on the shop floor versus today on the shop floor. The point is, you will always have these cycles where you will have one part go out of optimality, and then the ecosystem reins it back in because you're piling up too many components for the next player in the value chain. And then again, there's no doubting that the general direction tends towards the ecosystem catching up rather than slowing down. But again, to Nitanshi's point, if you look at marketing or something, there is a pushback. There is also a diminishing returns and the pushback that will come that will force you to find that equilibrium. But I believe that it will always be disruption followed by adjustment, followed by equilibrium, as opposed to a limitless cycle. And I don't think anybody can claim with the number of steps you have in the value chain to have control over all of these, especially over adoption.
I think the question of productivity and how fascinated of someone is with productivity is important. When you're talking about artificial intelligence and productivity, there is a set standard of productivity you will get when you roll certain algorithms and the productivity is set to a certain level. But then again, there is a limit or a cap you are putting there in terms of the responses or the innovation or intuition and judgment. There is a cap there. That it won't come beyond that point. If we are calling that cap 100%, then that is 100%. You'll never get 120%. I'll give you a very funny example. One of the companies which I was working previously, I was obviously leading a marketing team, and we were almost 15 people. And the client we were working with also had an operations wing where there were almost 100 people working on the operations side. So their work was fixed, like billing, receivables, and all that work, which was there. And they were being monitored constantly. Like if you move your mouse and your mouse does not move 5 minutes, your laptop would take off that 5 minutes out of your productive hours. And that is how they were monitoring productivity. They implemented the same thing on the marketing team. And the funny side was our productivity went down drastically because the team was so demotivated. Our work was not the same way as the operations guy. Their productivity remained at 100%. Whereas the workforce wanted to leave, people wanted to leave. They did not want to work in this kind of environment because our work required intuition. It required thought process, creativity. And in those kind of setup, when you are too focused on productivity, it will lead to a lot of damage. So, and that is why they ultimately had to roll it back. So it is important in what setup we are looking at productivity. If we are looking at repetitive work which can be scaled and all, in those have been fascinated with productivity is good. You improve your algorithms, you go to the 100% and you be happy with it. Whereas with humans, you cannot be fascinated with just productivity because you're trying to get more out of them than just the work to be done.
Yeah, Mr. Srivastava, your point.
I think we know that Nitanshi pretty much covered all the cycle. So end of the day, I think most of the time the productivity can bring you leisure, right? I mean, that's already said because you can see that nowadays we have a lot more leisure than our parents, probably our grandparents. If you had to go to Delhi, it's now 2 hours from Hyderabad. But earlier I used to go to college, like in a train. I studied in Jalandhar. So from Vijayawada to Jalandhar, it almost took me almost 2 days to reach my college, right? But now it's just a matter of like 2 hours or 3 hours max, right? I can reach London in 10 hours, right? So I think the ability, the entire productivity will always result in leisure, right? So one of the career advice for all of you youngsters is to actually keep developing more, not technical knowledge alone, right? Try to bring out art, be a singer, be a dancer, make a movie, right? Bring out more the creative aspect of what you're doing, and because end of the day, right, all this course, like, okay, somebody has to wash the house, clean the house, clean the utensils, do some, grunt core, or all this will be gone, right? People will have a lot more leisure, right? And then they want more they will tend towards having a lot more entertainment. So if you excel in areas like creative art, that probably is a good advice, because in our parents never let us do that, right? I was studying in 89. I was in 10th grade. Right, I wanted to read some books and all, like, then it was strict no, right? I actually wanted to make movies, right? And I became so stupid that I tried to actually create design patterns for movies, right? There are actually design patterns for movies. If you guys are interested, you should actually read something like The Writer's Journey. I don't know if you have seen all movies, right? They will all have the same story, especially the hit movies. And the stupid movies anyway are not going to have those patterns, but there will be a lot of patterns, right? There are characters, right? So if you look at the characters, I don't know, I forgot the name. These three guys travel. Hrithik Roshan, Farhan, and the other guy, they travel, right? In that movie, the Hrithik Roshan character is like a businessman, right? He can't think about anything else, right? He just wants to do his job and job and job and job, right? That's his character. He's paid with like Katrina Kaif, who's more of a Amazon woman, right? Who tries to enjoy nature more, and then like, okay, they are paid together. So that's again a pattern, right? Okay, so if you actually read something more creative, right, that will actually benefit you guys a lot more, because by the time, it takes approximately 5 to 10 years to find a technology, another 5 to 10 years to actually start adopting, and another 5 to 10 years to gain maturity around that. Like, say, internet has come in somewhere around 95, 96. Like by 2006, it actually started getting mainstream adoption. Now in 2021, right, we now know everything is internet, right? You book your TV ticket, train tickets, movie tickets, anything without internet, you don't know what to do, right? You'll be cut off from life, right? So same thing with blockchain, right? Okay, blockchain is now 10 years old, probably 2009 it started with Bitcoin. 2015 it started with Ethereum. Now there are like 100 other blockchains, right? By the time the adoption goes mainstream, probably by 2030 blockchain will be mainstream, right? So likewise, artificial intelligence, again, the adoption can actually happen a little faster. The productivity gains will be there, right? And obviously all of you will have a lot more leisure time and concentrate on more leisure activities and that will actually get you a lot more edge on your other peers, right?
So let me quickly add a couple of quotes, because I know, Professor, you have one last question for us and we have a few. minutes. So I think combining many of the things what almost everyone else talked of, I think I'll just summarize with one quote, which is effectively what I think all of us are saying, that the problems of tomorrow will not be you will not be able to solve with skills of today. So hence how you will evolve, and hence whatever is the your definition of productivity itself is going to change. So when you will embrace that new technology or new things which are coming, it doesn't mean that your life is going to become more routine or more easy. It's just that the definition of productivity itself can change. We talked of leisure and others, but now if you see, everyone has mobile, is always connected, but moment a plane lands, everyone is actually either on the answering the email or sending a message or on the call. So and still one of the biggest attributes which most of the employees mention in any surveys, they want work-life balance, right? So therefore, it's really going to change. And combining it with the fact that I think almost everyone else talked of is what is for solving these problems of tomorrow, you then really have to think of a whole-brained framework approach. So that will actually be combining the liberal arts with the classical logical thinking, engineering, analytical one. And because that is where if you bring a whole-brained approach, you will do really well. And how quickly this will happen is, I'll leave with a second quote. If some of you follow Bill Gates, what he really said is that you always overestimate the change which is going to happen in the next 2 years, but we always underestimate the impact of those changes over the next 20 years. So there will always be a multiplier effect, and as long as we stay ahead of the curve and we stay in the groove, we'll be able to leave that. So I'll just stop that so that you can have a quick last question you had in mind.
Yeah, now that we understand that there's a symbiotic relationship, basically speaking, between AI and HI, and we're looking forward to that. So my last question would be, how do you see the roles of the professionals changing? Means for our students who would be part of the industry for the next 30 or 40 years, how do you think, with AI being one of the primary integrators in terms of organizations or decision making, how do you see their roles changing in the next decade or 2 decades, which is forthcoming?
I'll start with a go, and I think, frankly, one of the things about my profession, which is the management of information in corporates, every few years or so you get this, Armageddon kind of a thing that comes, that, Nicholas Carr's IT doesn't matter kind of a cycle, which says that, look, your job is being automated, you're out of a job. My joke, it's more of a joke, but there is, like all more good jokes, there is an inherent truth to it, is that even this has to be implemented by somebody. So if I look at this generation, really this generation is on the cusp of implementation of a number of these technologies. And if you look at that 5, 10, 20-year span for the maturation of AI and the implementation of AI, that is really where a lot of people in the forefront of technology management today will find their niches. Even if you believe, which I don't think you should if you've been listening to Shashi and Sanjay and Nitanshi, but even if you believe that, what is happening now is the end of a professional work life, getting there will take significant effort by a number of professionals that will have to implement that. So the good news, guys, I don't see any risks for any of you having any shortage of things to do over the next 20, 30 years of your career. I think at various points in my life, I've been told that, no, you've been digitized out of your role. I think various industries have been told that they've been digitized out of their roles. I think the idea of a professional, especially one that is tasked with the actual implementation of many of these technologies, gives you an idea that this is a profession that has legs. You know, the art and science of being a practitioner of management and an implementer of, if you will, all of these brilliant things is a lifetime. And so if I were you guys, I wouldn't worry too much about it. But to your point, Professor, I see professionals having to adapt in terms of their skill sets and in terms of what it will take to be successful is probably going to be very different. But the number of roles that exist around taking what we have by way of AI and making it mainstream, these are some of the people that will be doing that. And accordingly, that is, if you will, the what. The how I will leave to time to unfold, but the what is certainly there. Thank you.
If just to summarize, and I quite agree with what Vinod said, actually, it's, I think we don't have to be wary of artificial intelligence, not something which will, kind of gulp away half the jobs and there will be out of 1 lakh, only 50,000 would be left, nothing like that. Okay. But there are changes which are going to come. And let's look at the positive side of it. AI has also created huge industries, right? Today, Facebook, social media, and many other industries exist because AI exists. If AI was not there, then these might not have existed. Second is it has scaled much bigger than what it was before, right? It has scaled a lot of industries. It has scaled the consumption also. Yesterday, if you were buying just one shirt, probably going to the store, today you keep scrolling Amazon and say 10 other, applications, you buy a little more. So there is a huge market which AI has created, and there is a place for everybody. How do you survive here is the question. And the survival will happen that when you keep reinventing yourself, investing in yourself, and don't be reactive. Okay, it has to be proactive. For example, I'll tell you, my husband has been on the sales side forever. Like his last 15 years, he has been on the sales side. And as he kept moving up the value chain, he suddenly realized that the traditional way of selling to the customer, he's in a bank on the corporate side, on the B2B side, and the way you sell to the customer is slowly changing, right? Earlier, you would go to the customer, tell him 2-3 products, and they would choose out of those 1 or 2. Now you become from sales to a business development person. Okay, and there are no more head of sales mostly in most of the industries today. It is most head. And what does a business development manager do? He is not only looking at people going out to the customer, he's also looking at technology, the data coming in, how to improvise that data, use that data to reach out to the customer at the right time. All those questions are there in front of him. So somebody who was there just going to the customer, talking to the customer, an RM today, in today's time, or I say my husband 15 years back, he was going to the customer, talking to the customer, selling him 2 set of products or 5 set of products. Today has to go through a full cycle of selling cycle, okay, and how he reaches out to the customer, how he looks at data and what point in time he should. And he has to differentiate himself to live and to make a difference and be different from all the other people. And I think that is how all of us are surviving. All of us over a career of say 10 years, 15 years, would have seen these evolutions in our different state. Me as marketing person, and I think Vinod sir, Shashi, all of us would have seen this transformation. So this transformation is something which you should always be ready for. That adaptability, and humans are most adaptable species. That's the best part. So I think if we are able to adapt to these changing times, adapt the new technology, adapt to what the market wants, I don't think so there is dearth of job for you. And I don't think so there is anybody who cannot adopt. So I think I'm very, very positive on the uses of AI. There are drawbacks. There are things where we have to develop consciousness and all. But at the same time, I don't think so we should be afraid of these changes. These changes are for good and they are there to stay, and there will be many more changes which will come. It is up to us how we change ourselves according to them.
Right. Okay, so I think most of it is said already. I think end of the day, guys, when you become entrepreneurs, when you become business leaders, right? Change is constant. Right? That's what Sanjay was saying. Right? So you need to know how to adapt. Right? See, AI will definitely create a lot of jobs, right? Like Nitanshi was saying. Right? It's the application of AI is in its infancy right now. Right, and it's really infant. I mean, all you're doing is like, okay, doing some face recognition, doing some anti-money laundering, algorithms or some of these things were at a very nascent stage, right? The intersection of robotics plus artificial intelligence making unnatural human, right? That will happen, right, over the next 50, 60, 70 years. I don't know, 2050. If you take 2050, right, most of you guys will be around probably 40, 45, middle-aged, right? I think it's a great opportunity for all of you guys to really, I mean, again, keeping the values, core human values, don't forget them, right? But you can actually really be part of the revolution, create a lot of applications of AI, and I think given IBS, we know the kind of standards you guys have. It's an excellent school. I wish we had more opportunity to study in regular B schools, but I think you guys should actually not be afraid, like Nitanshi was saying. Just embrace it, and you guys are digital natives, right? We are digital migrants, right? We migrated from a non-digital world to a digital world, but you guys are native, right? Today for you, FB is like there forever, right? Okay, you've been browsing, you'll do Insta, you actually post a photograph on Insta, that becomes that comes out naturally for you guys. I mean, if you look at my Facebook posts, other than the ones my corporate communications manager bugs me saying, okay, post, and otherwise I'll not even like it, right? But you guys are natural, right? So you will always, probably be more adaptive of the machine intelligence which is actually coming at you, right? Apply it and never forget the core human values, right? Try to make it more think from a consciousness perspective rather than just intelligence perspective. Not everything is automation. Not every automatable thing needs to be automated, right? It can be delayed, right? There is a time and place for everything. So when you guys become decision makers in your life, right, don't forget human values, right? That's very important, and that's where I will leave it with you guys, right? So thank you so much.
So in conclusion, I think I would want to say a couple of things. One is I mentioned that to adapting, as Professor said, over your complete career, and increasingly with better health and productivity, the career span itself is going up. So referring to what I talked of a couple of questions back, the capability to learn, unlearn, and relearn is really important. And therefore, what you should really see is everyone talked of to embrace the change. For embracing this change, what do you need to do? What you really need to do is you need to think of, each one of you need to think of really different ways by which you can really build, transform, and scale your capabilities, your abilities to do it. Can it really be done? It can be done. So For example, everyone is talking about 25 years later how it will be. We don't know how it will be, but you have to continuously plan. So to give you an example of my past 26 years, after my management, for first 5 years, actually, I created the complete financial services, fintech services for India. The next 12 years, I actually took India to the globe by creating the largest conglomerate for Tatas for internet and telecom. So when the revolution started, I was part of the team which actually took over VSNL and then actually led that global transformation to Tata Communications, which now actually is the global behemoth. 30% of the total traffic runs on that. And then for 7 years, much before Make in India became fashionable, I was working in Mahindra, working with the PMO and the Niti Aayog, really getting companies from across the globe and Indians to really believe in India. And while I did all of that, always staying ahead of the curve, today when I am speaking with all of you, I actually remember once upon a time I was actually a computer science engineer. So from a computer science engineer to a management graduate to what you did, maybe when I was doing that, it would have been virtually impossible for me to think that I would be doing all these things. So what you really have to take it along with is capability to build, transform, and scale your capabilities, and it will come. And sometimes it's best to leave things open-ended. So let me leave a thoughtful quote for you to think. Many of you may or may not have heard of Lenin, but one of his most famous quotes, though he was a communist, which is applicable in today's world of capitalism, is he said that there are decades when nothing happens, and then there are weeks in which decades happen. So I think a COVID-19 pandemic, another, the supply chain disruption, all of that really brought all of these into the. So there will definitely be expected change and unexpected change. I think the winners will be the one who are ready and embracing it with full gusto and go ahead and conquer the world. So I'm sure all of you will strive for that. So all the best for that.
Thank you. Thank you to all the esteemed panelists for your valuable suggestions, feedback, the discussions that we had, and from the Institute, from behalf of the Institute and from Dot Club, basically speaking, I want to thank you. Basically, why? Because we interact with students and we try to bring forth the academic path, but these type of discussions with actual practitioners go ahead and make the students knowledgeable about the recent trends and at least give them some kind of assurance. There are so many different type of fears and thoughts and everything which happens during MBA. So basically, these kind of discussions provide the assurance that although we always try to go ahead and think that machine is going to replace human exposure, or basically, let's say, the human, they call that the human availability as such, human requirement as such. But normally, from your viewpoint, we can still understand that there are always chances and there are always scope where the roles and responsibilities might change, but then human intelligence is inevitable in the near future. So thank you so much to all the esteemed panel members, and we look forward to have you in similar terms of discussions in later also as part of the institute. Over to you, Divyansh.
Thank you, sir. On behalf of Dot Club and IBS Hyderabad, we would like to thank all our speakers for your valuable time and wonderful insights on the topic. On any given day, we would definitely love to hear from you again.
The trailer video which we saw at the beginning was none other than the annual magazine of Dot Club, Advaita. Advaita will provide information about exciting innovations around the world, the impact of technology in today's world, as well as how our lives have been transformed by advancement in technology. Technology has helped human population to become more knowledgeable, to have access to greater information, and all of this help us to grow in our careers as well as in our individual lives. Now presenting to you by Dot Club, Advaita. Now can we have a look at the magazine? Advaita is your essential dose of technology. For a reader today could be a leader tomorrow.
Okay, so I know what's really making you impatient. The most awaited part of the day. The time has arrived wherein we will be revealing the winners of
Wait. Divyanshi, wait. Why are you in a hurry? See, everyone has been very patiently listening to all the speakers. So why not have an entertainment break so that everyone can just relax, sit back, and enjoy before we reveal the results?
You know what, Janice? I think it's a great idea. So then, hold on your excitement and welcome the Expressions Theatre Society to showcase an entertaining and beautiful play for us.
Sir, an asteroid from the main asteroid belt is coming towards us. It is going to hit India in less than an hour if we don't do anything.
Vijay, Send me whatever information you have right now.
On it, sir.
It's gonna crash in 43 minutes. God damn it.
What do we do, sir?
We blast that rock in space. Vijay, I'll get back to you. Karunya.
Can this wait, Raj?
I wish you रुक पाता Karunya. But that's not the case. तुम्हें याद तो होगा एक बार हम पाशुपतास्त्र की बात कर रहे थे. India's most powerful missile.
Yeah, it's just a prototype, Raj. What about it?
Cut. Yeah, I know. So here's the deal. An asteroid is gonna hit the southern part of India in next 40 minutes. और मैं चाहता हूँ कि तुम पाशुपतास्त्र को फायर करो उस एस्टेरॉइड पे.
तुम्हें पता है तुम क्या मांग रहे हो? मैं अकेले नहीं कर सकती हूँ. The Prime Minister is directly involved in this.
Karunya, this is not the time. The asteroid is gonna crash. अभी हमारे पास वक्त नहीं है कि हम सोचते बैठे कि हमें क्या करना है, और ना ही पीएम के पास जा सकते हैं इस वक्त. हमारे पास अभी वक्त नहीं है कि हम एक राउंड टेबल कॉन्फ्रेंस के लिए बुलाएं और उसके बाद सोचें कि हमें एस्ट्रॉइड फायर करना चाहिए कि नहीं करना चाहिए. दिस इज डू और डाई सिचुएशन. डू यू अंडरस्टैंड मी? हजारों लाखों की जान जाने का खतरा है. जस्ट गेट इट डन.
Arey, I know what is at stake here, Raj, but I need to communicate this.
Hello. What did you say?
Arey, I have to communicate the...
Just stay on the line. विजय, जो एस्ट्रॉइड अभी आ रहा है उसका ट्रेजेक्टरी पाथ को ट्रेस करो and just tell me if it's gonna hit any of our satellites.
Sir, at the rate the asteroid is approaching, it is going to crash into our communication satellite, sir. GSAT 31 before it hits India.
Damn it. कितना वक्त है हमारे पास?
Exactly 12 minutes, sir.
Karuna, listen to me. This is not the time to argue. One of our satellites, GSAT 31, is about to get hit by that asteroid. And further, उसका debris दूसरे satellite से जाके टकराएगा. Do you get that? India is gonna go to a war just because the chief of DRDA was too scared to make that tough call.
But the Prime Minister?
I don't care about the Prime Minister. Just get it done. करुण्या, हजारों लाखों की जान दांव पे लगी है. Please.
Fire the Pashupatastra to the coordinates I sent.
But ma'am, the protocol...
जितना बोला गया है उतना करो, soldier. It's an order.
Ma'am, the target is hit.
Thank God.
Is it destroyed? Yes!
You owe me one, Raj. Now hang up. I have to talk to the Prime Minister.
Thank you so much, Expression Theatre Society. It was really a wonderful and entertaining play. I hope everyone enjoyed it too. Okay, Divyanshi, now that we are done with the entertainment part, we can reveal the results as promised.
But before that, we have a good news. So all the participants attending this conclave will be getting a certificate for it.
And also, before we start with the Vyuh results, we have a winner for the Connect the Dot contest. The winner is none other than Palak Agarwal. Congratulations, Palak, on winning the contest.
Congratulations. Now let's straight away move to the results. So the position of second runner-up is a tie between Team Crazy Bingers and
the Team Messenger. And the first runners-up goes to the Team Animates.
And the most awaited winner of the Vyuh 6.0 goes to
Team Duos from the South.
Heartiest congratulations to all the winners for their victory. We would also like to congratulate all the participants, as winning or losing is not the thing that counts, but the experience and learning which we gain. After all, your participation matters to us, and we highly value your time for being a part of our flagship event.
We would like to thank Dr. Shankar Gupta, sir, for your valuable time and moderating today's conclave. We would like to thank our student activity coordinator, Madhavi Garikapati, ma'am, and mentor of Dot Club, Krishna Kumar Datsena, sir, for your resounding and unwavering support, and most importantly, your valuable presence. We would like to extend our heartfelt gratitude to all our sponsors and associate sponsors for extending your valuable assistance in organizing this flagship event. We would also like to thank our beloved President, Satyajit Nanda, Vice Presidents Ankan Chakraborty and Aishwarya Patra, Tanmay Nanda, and all our senior members of Dot Club for helping us and grooming us for the event. Last but not the least, we would like to thank all the participants for your participation and making today's event a success. All good things come to an end. Likewise, today's wonderful session have also come to an end.
So once again, we thank each one of you for joining us. That's all for the day. Goodbye and have a nice evening ahead. And we look forward to hosting you again. Good night and goodbye.
Good night, everyone.